short time ago, I spoke with Malaysia's Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry, and I started the conversation by asking him about managing the geopolitics and trade fallout on the nation's growth. Listen in.
We are still cautiously optimistic. GDP this year expected to be around 4 to 5%. We'll be announcing GDP for last year, which we think will be reaching around 4% as well. There will definitely be some negative impact of what's happening globally, and therefore that's why we are a bit more conservative in our GDP forecast of around 4 to 5%. And Malaysia, you're right, it's a trading open economy. Trade to GDP is 160%. So we'll be watching this closely, and we hope that situation will not escalate and have impact to the region and to Malaysia as well.
And one of the other challenges that you have, and it's sort of good and bad, is the trading relationship that you have with China. You can throw in the potential upside and the potential downside or uncertainty with that. Just this week, we heard the news that a Hong Kong court wants to see a liquidation of one of the biggest property giants in the world, Evergrande. The risk, of course, with it being such a huge sector of the Chinese economy, that you feel the negative headwinds over in Malaysia too. Again, how concerned are you about that? And perhaps most important question, how do you better insulate Malaysia?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Julia. I think, China remains an important trading partner to the region, to ASEAN and to Malaysia. It's one of the largest trading partners, if not the largest for many of the countries here. And the growth in China is going to have an impact to the growth in this region. And property sector, we all know about what's happening in the property sector in China and the possible impact to the whole economy of China in general. So yes, we'll look this very closely, but it's like you said, insulating an economy like Malaysia is important, as we are very open. And if you look at the global economy itself, I mean, China is 18% of the GDP of the world, and US, of course, is the largest, but both of them is around 45% of the total GDP. So these two major economic powers going to have a bearing to Southeast Asia, and especially to Malaysia. And we are looking at improving and increasing and diversifying our trade with other countries as well, in other regions as well. And I think one thing that worth mentioning, Julia, is to also increase intra-trade within the region, within ASEAN, which is only at 20% today.
Why is it so low, sir? And how do you boost that? Because I look at the trade tariffs between the nations, actually, and they're virtually zero. And it's a huge change over the past 20 years. So how do you galvanize more trade in the region? Because I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's something that we, as trade ministers in the region, are working closely to make sure that we can increase that number. It's very low, as you rightly said. One of the things that we're looking at is to complete an agreement. We call it a Digital Economic Framework Agreement by 2025. We call it DEFA, because electronic trade will definitely increase trade within the region. And ASEAN, as a population today, total population 680 million, of which 50% is below the age of 30, right? And to look at the GDP of ASEAN is about 3.7 trillion US dollars. Trade is around the same number, around 3.8 trillion US dollars. So there are a lot of upside potential if we can increase the trade numbers within the region.
Yeah, and that's important for other nations as well, looking at the region and the opportunities that it presents. You also, as Malaysia, follow a policy of active neutrality between the United States and China. And we've seen the burgeoning technology rivalry, I think, which presents, again, challenges, but also opportunities for a nation like yourself that's so intrinsically involved in chip manufacturing in particular. Can you see an opportunity for Malaysia amidst the challenges of those two nations, whether it's to increase your supply chain to other nations or perhaps be at the forefront, perhaps, of chip manufacturing and circuit design in the future?
Yes, I think it's going to be very, very important as companies are looking at supply chain resiliency. And we are seeing that increase in investments into Malaysia and into the region. In a year, for example, the year 2022, the total FDI that's coming into ASEAN has actually increased 5%. And if you look at against what's happening in the world FDI, global FDI, which is down 12%. And for Malaysia, the first 9 months number for when it comes to investment has been a record high in a decade, actually. the last 10 years, the first 9 months numbers. So that shows that there is opportunity among, against this kind of very tough backdrop in terms of the global economy outlook. And you're right, for Malaysia, we are seeing a benefit of coming from the E&E sector, especially in the semiconductor and chip sector. Malaysia has been in this sector for a while now, in the last 50 years, and in terms of global market share of semiconductor assembly and testing, for example, we're about 12 to 13%, and we are the sixth largest exporter of semiconductor. And the E&E sector is so big in Malaysia that 40% of our exports are actually from the E&E sector, Julia.